Today, we're jumping into something that's right at the heart of medical progress, how we talk about risk in clinical trials. We're going to explore how to talk about all the unknowns, the uncertainty, with real clarity and, most importantly, with integrity.
So let's just start with a really powerful question that kind of sets the stage for everything we're about to cover. What if the biggest ethical hurdle in research isn't finding the risks, but figuring out how to explain them honestly? You see how that shifts things? It's not just about the science, it's about the human conversation.
And that leads us to what you could call an honesty problem. Look, every single clinical trial is built on uncertainty. I mean, that's the whole point, right? We're doing the research because we don't have all the answers. The real challenge, the tricky part, is communicating that uncertainty clearly.
So, why is this such a big deal? Why does it matter so much? Well, because the stakes here are incredibly high. The way we talk about risk isn't some academic exercise. It affects real people, real decisions, and the entire future of research.
Let's just break that down a bit. Clear communication is absolutely central. It's the difference between someone giving informed consent and just signing a form. It affects who joins a trial and, just as important, who stays in it. It shapes the decisions that regulators make. And maybe the biggest one of all, it's the very foundation of public trust in science. If you get this wrong, you can do some serious damage.
All right, so we get it. The stakes are high. Now let's talk about the core problem, the uncertainty challenge. You know, science is messy. It's full of unknowns, unexpected side effects, different results for different people. The data can even change in the middle of a study. The challenge is, how do you talk about all of that honestly without either scaring people away or giving them a false sense of security? It's a real tightrope walk.
And this slide shows you the two cliffs you can easily fall off. On one side, you can exaggerate the fear. You cause panic and you scare people away from research that could actually help them. But on the other side, you can minimize the concerns, and that is just as bad. You compromise your ethics and you put people's safety on the line. The goal is to find that narrow path right down the middle.
So how do we actually walk that line? Well, the good news is we don't have to guess. There's actually a really clear and practical blueprint for integrity, a framework for how to have these tough conversations in an ethical way.
And that framework is built on 4 core principles. They're pretty straightforward, but they are so powerful when you put them together. First, transparency. Second, contextualization. Third, using clear, plain language. And finally, and this one's a big one, acknowledging what you don't know. So let's dive into each one.
All right, first up, transparency. Now this sounds obvious, but it's the absolute bedrock of everything else. It just means being completely upfront and honest about all the known risks. No hiding things, no sugarcoating. This is where trust begins.
And in practice, transparency isn't just a feeling. It's about being specific. It means you give the hard data. How often does this happen? How bad is it when it does? And it means you absolutely have to avoid those useless, vague phrases like generally safe. I mean, what does that even mean? If your data is limited, you say so. That's real transparency.
Okay, let's build on that with our second principle. So, you've shared the data, but numbers all by themselves can be really misleading. That's where contextualization comes in. This is all about giving those numbers some actual meaning.
I mean, think about it. Someone tells you there's a 2% risk. What do you do with that? Is 2% a lot? Is it a little? By itself, that number is almost worthless. It might even just sound scary.
But now, look what happens when we put that 2% in context. We see that the risk for the general population is 1%, and the risk with the current standard treatment is actually 4%. All of a sudden, that 2% risk with the new product looks totally different, right? It's not just a scary number anymore. It's real information that someone can use to make a decision. That's context.
Okay, which brings us to principle number 3, clarity in language. You can have all the transparent data, all the context in the world, but if it's buried under a mountain of scientific jargon, it's totally useless to the person who needs to understand it. This is about speaking like a normal human being. And this is a perfect example. The before is, a statistically significant increase in adverse events was observed. Okay, what? Now look at the after. In our study, this meant 3 more people out of 100 experienced headaches. See? Now that is something anyone can get their head around. It's clear, it's respectful, and it's actually useful.
And that leads us to our final principle. And honestly, this might be the most powerful one of all. Acknowledgement of unknowns. This is about having the integrity to just say, here's what we don't know yet,
And here's the thing that feels kind of backward, but is so true. Saying "I don't know" doesn't make you look weak. It's a sign of incredible scientific honesty, and it actually builds trust.
So when you hear things like, there may be risks that are currently unknown, or we're still studying the long-term effects, that's not a red flag. It should actually be reassuring. It means the researchers are being completely straight with you about where the limits of their knowledge are. And that creates a much deeper level of trust. So to kind of wrap this up, let's look at the flip side, the things you want to avoid. These are basically the opposites of our principles. Things like downplaying bad news, hiding behind a wall of jargon, using misleading statistics, and this is a big one, not updating the information when new safety data comes out. Avoiding these traps is just as crucial as doing the right things.
Because at the end of the day, all of these principles, they all point to the same goal, building trust by telling the truth. This isn't just about good paperwork or checking off a box for regulators. It's about the real human impact of this research.
I want to pause on this for a second because it's just so important. Behind every adverse event table is a participant who entrusted researchers with their health. It's such a powerful reminder that we're not talking about spreadsheets and data points. We are talking about people.
So the goal, the whole point of getting this right, is to honor those people who make science possible. And how do we do that? We empower them to make truly informed decisions. We make sure their families feel seen and respected. And by doing that, we make the entire research community stronger because it's built on a foundation of real public trust. And that really brings us to the main takeaway of this whole explainer. Being honest about what you don't know, that's not a flaw in the scientific process. It's not a weakness. It is, in fact, its greatest strength. It shows integrity, it shows rigor, and it shows respect for every single person involved.
So I'll just leave you with this final question to chew on. In this constant search for cures, what's more important in the long run? The answers we find or the honesty we show while we're looking for them? It's definitely something worth thinking about.